Hallo zusammen. Heute habe ich einen sehr, sehr interessanten Gast und wir sprechen über die CIA. Ich habe die Chance, mit John Kiriakou, dem CIA-Whistleblower, zu sprechen, der die Verhörmethode des Folterns in der CIA, aber auch in militärischen Interviews gewhistleblowt hat, heute im Gespräch und wir sprechen darüber, wie lange er im Gefängnis war für seine tapfere Tat, was sich daraus entwickelt hat, dass es einen Gesetzesentwurf gab, der jetzt auch verabschiedet wurde, dass es keine Folterungen mehr geben darf. Aber wir sprechen natürlich auch über das Attentat auf JFK. War die CIA involviert? Inwieweit war sie involviert? Dann sprechen wir auch über Nord Stream. Aber lasst uns doch einfach in das Interview reinschauen. John, thank you for having you on our show. It's such a pleasure and wow.
Thank you. Pleasure's mine.
Being in the CIA and like being a whistleblower from the most, I don't know, fascinating agency for myself in the US because I always like, oh, that's kind of like the American James Bond feeling. So is it actually like it, or is it more Hollywood makes it a little bit more appealing for the audience?
You know, of all the films and TV series, there are just a few that are accurate or close to accurate. James Bond is actually pretty accurate. We don't have all the cool devices that James
Sadly.
Bond would get from Q, but in terms of the tradecraft, it's pretty accurate. There was a film that came out, well, now 20 years ago called The Recruit.
Mhm.
Uh, that was very accurate. And among TV shows that you might have seen, Homeland is really, really close
Yeah, I like
to
that one.
to reality. Yeah, very close.
Wow. So, coming directly with a Homeland, because we saw about this in this show where we have the um, US, I think he was US Army soldier,
Hmm. Hmm.
and being captured in Afghanistan, coming back and being kind of like the new threat, and have so, which is actually the target of the CIA. So, can you talk a little bit about because you were in the counterterrorism unit for the CIA about how does this work? Because we have all those rumors. We heard about Guantanamo, what might had happened there, and then that the CIA is also allowed to torture a little bit their threats to get more intel out of them. So can you just give us a little inside view about how does this worked?
Well, I'm proud to say that I blew the whistle against the CIA's torture program in December of 2007. I was imprisoned for it for 23 months. But because of my revelations, Congress banned torture permanently.
Perfect.
It's called the McCain-Feinstein Amendment. And torture, even at Guantanamo, stopped. Uh, but before uh, 2014 and passage of the McCain-Feinstein Amendment, torture was a tool that the military and the CIA used on a regular basis to the point where they tortured a lot of people to death and then would just bury them in unmarked graves wherever they happened to have been tortured. So yeah, it was a dark stain on the United States, but by all accounts, that's over.
Yeah. But do you think there were some like did all other intelligence services knew about that? Like the German MAD, the military intelligence service or something like that, because that would be interesting for us.
Well, certainly some intelligence services knew about it. I would say that the Germans likely did not know,
Okay,
but the CIA set up secret prisons in countries all around the world, at least six of them. And these were secret prisons that were so secret that in most cases, even the presidents and prime ministers of these countries didn't know that a secret CIA prison was on their territory. These were unwritten handshake deals between the director of the CIA and the director of that country's intelligence service. That all ended in 2015 2005 or 2006, when all of those secret prisons were closed and all the prisoners were moved to Guantanamo. But to answer your question directly, in many cases, foreign intelligence services knew that the CIA's prisoners were being tortured.
Yeah, that's a when you think about we have Den Haag and all those com contracts that we would not torture, and then you say, okay, we did that for the better good.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about for actually doing the right thing and blowing the whistle, being backstabbed by the law in America to go into prison for doing actually the right thing?
Yeah, I hate it. It changed the course of the rest of my life. I lost everything. I lost my family. I lost my freedom. I lost my job. I lost my pension. I lost everything. Everything that I had built over the course of decades. I lost it. But it was worth it
Yeah.
because there is a greater good here. Torture's wrong, period. It's illegal, it's immoral, it's unethical, and it shouldn't be done. And so I'm glad that I played a part in it going away.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Thank you for that. That's
Thank you.
very, very brave. And um, when you still see, you said to me before we started the interview that the CIA is a criminal organization because they can just do also things what they do in foreign countries, conducting intel, just taking people from the street, and if they are a threat, they get rid of them. They also could do this in the United States, which is actually unconstitutional. But like you said, Obama changed that. So why is this?
There there
Yeah.
was a very dramatic congressional hearing
Oh, tell me, please.
in 2015. Congress passed a law called the National Defense Authorization Act in 2014, and it allowed the president to use, quote, any means necessary to stop terrorist threats against the United States. And so the Attorney General of the United States, Eric Holder, was testifying on Capitol Hill. And a senator from the state of Kentucky, Rand Paul, asked him, does this law mean that the president can kill or kidnap or even use a drone to kill an American citizen in the United States who has never been charged with a crime?
For just accusations that he might be a threat.
And the answer was yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Now, we don't think it's ever been done.
We
There's no
hope
evidence,
not.
but the president is allowed to kill an American citizen on American soil, even if he's never been convicted of a crime.
Now that's makes it easy to get rid of your opponents, I guess. So for
Mhm.
sorry for being that sarcastic, but
But you're exactly right. You know, where do you draw the line?
yeah,
Do you start killing people you don't like? Do you start killing people if you don't like their politics?
yeah. And right now we are in a very critical situation in America because America is so much divided from having Biden in office. Now we have Trump back in office, and there's a lot of change going on right now. And when you have then those kind of powers as a president, that's kind of like, whoa, okay. At what point are they open to do so? Like, how much have people to poke the bear?
It's that's a question that we really don't know the answer to yet. But I'll tell you the reason why it's getting worse and worse and worse is because you have a president like Donald Trump who keeps appointing judges who not only are not qualified, but they're appointed specifically because they're supporters of Donald Trump. And so the American Bar Association will tell the US Senate in their confirmation hearings, this person is not qualified to be a judge. And they become a judge anyway. and then they take over the Supreme Court. So now the Supreme Court is 6 Republicans and 3 Democrats. And 3 of the 6 Republicans were appointed by Donald Trump. So what happens then when you have a president who knows he can do anything he wants and the courts are going to tell him that it's okay? It's a slippery slope to fascism.
But we also had this lawfare in under Biden where he used the
And
FBI
Obama.
in Obama, and just get the example out with January 6th with
Mhm.
the domestic terrorism units, where there was they going after more the conservative, the right side of the aisle, and totally forget the Antifa supporting people. So this is crazy to see. It's a different agency, but they did the same kind of being used by the people in the White House for getting rid of their components. So, is there actually a hope for America that they finally stop that, or is this
I,
just
I I'm actually not hopeful right now. The former U.S. attorney for the state of Utah, very high level prosecutor in the Justice Department, said about my case. He said the Kiriakou case was the template for the Democratic Party's policy of lawfare. So you're right. This did not start with Donald Trump. Trump has made it worse, certainly. But this actually started with Barack Obama and continued with Joe Biden and then got worse with Donald Trump. They're all guilty of it, all of them.
so we have to hope after 4 years we have another president who gonna stop that, or
I've been in Washington for 42 years and I have followed American politics all my life. And I genuinely cannot name a single person in either party who would reverse this.
yeah, because it's a game of power. Why would
It's
they?
a game of power, exactly. And why would you voluntarily give up power? Nobody does that.
Yeah, and especially not politicians who are seeing their seeing as a job. Like we always says, the best politician is the person who doesn't want to be a politician. But
Mhm.
right now we have only I don't know if there's a word in in English, the working politician, but that's interesting to see, especially when you come from a foreign country. Right now, we saw the Signal chat gate leak thing just coming up, where I just said, "Oh, that's just embarrassing," and shows the ignorance of the people just starting a Signal chat talking about
So
such
stupid.
important stuff. And it's not because everyone says, "Oh, that's a spying on Trump." So no, it's not. It's just an
No.
idiot person who put someone in a chat and didn't care about who was in the chat. He maybe just had the initials in it, and then he's, oh, that's the guy we actually need. But then it was the journalist. So that's kind of like um, the question for me as a foreigner is right now, how arrogant are we right now? Like having those chats, because normally you would think that that just happens in a skiff. I know it's not classified information, but it's
Right.
still too much information for getting leaked. We have to be
It
honest
is
here.
it is classified information.
Okay, because
And
they
it's
say
it's
no, it's
actually
not.
it's actually very highly classified information. Military targeting information is classified at the top secret level, the highest classification in government. So I was able to count 3 separate violations of the Espionage Act with this chat gate, this Signal chat gate. Um, First of all, using Signal, that's a violation of the Espionage Act. Um, Using Signal to convey top secret information, that's a violation of the Espionage Act. And talking classified information in the presence of a reporter, that's a violation of the Espionage Act.
Yeah, but they say they
The,
didn't know that, or someone put him
it
there. Yeah,
doesn't matter if it
yeah,
doesn't matter if they didn't know.
yeah,
In my case, my judge created a definition of espionage. And the definition is providing national defense information to any person not entitled to receive it.
yeah. Which
Period. And
yeah,
my lawyer stood up and said, Your Honor, are you saying that a person can commit espionage by accident? And she said, That's exactly what I'm saying. So whether they intended for this reporter to be on the chat or not is irrelevant.
Yeah, that's
He
what
was
I'm
on the
saying.
chat
It's stupidity and ignorance, and now we have the problem, and now they
and
want
criminal.
yeah, and now they say, oh, that's not just that a big deal. But I always, and I made a lot of people in my audience unhappy about that because I say, okay, how big would the outrage be if this had happened under Biden? Like now
Oh
everyone
yeah,
lays
they
it
would have.
down.
The Republicans would have crucified Biden if this had happened under Biden. But Trump, he doesn't care. Yesterday, Trump said, "Oh, maybe there was a glitch with the app. It was the app's fault that it added the reporter by itself automatically." It's
That's
like, are you crazy? Your people should be going to prison for even having this chat in the first place.
yeah, so that's like this is what I was thinking about. Like, you can't just downplay and say, ah, that's not that important. But yeah, that's what's going on right now. And having also, when we can switch the topic for a short time, like the JFK files just got published, and America was waiting over 60 years long to
Yeah,
get those informations. And being a whistleblower from the CIA, seeing all those bombshells, and like I was blown away reading this with the part with Israel and the Mossad that
yeah,
the nuclear weapons system got hidden, and the CIA especially made sure that Israel was never named in any kind of case. That's like wow, it's we talk about the assassination of an American president, and
yeah.
he was very liked, and he probably would have got reelected. Do you think the American people should be allowed to know that
Oh,
was involved or kind of was named a lot? Does the CIA want to hide all this influence from Israel?
where do we even begin to discuss this? Let's talk for a minute about the assassination of John Kennedy, about the fallout from the assassination of John Kennedy. I like to actually point this out because I believe this very strongly. If Kennedy had lived, there would have been no Vietnam War because when he died, he was making plans to withdraw the United States from
Yeah.
Vietnam. If there had been no Vietnam War, there would have been no 1968 riots. With no 1968 riots, there would have been no President Richard Nixon.
Hmm.
And without Richard Nixon, there would have been no Watergate, which means there would have been no Jimmy Carter. And if Jimmy Carter had never been president, there would have been no Ronald Reagan getting elected as the backlash to Jimmy Carter. If Ronald Reagan had never been elected president, we wouldn't have seen the birth of the Reagan Republican Party. And the birth of the Reagan Republican Party then gave rise to the election of Bill Clinton. Without Clinton, there wouldn't have been a George W. Bush, and without Bush, there wouldn't have been a Barack Obama because there would have been no Iraq War.
Yeah, all those wars were getting worse or started after the death of Kennedy. Like, uh,
It changed, his death changed literally every aspect of American history, every single aspect of American history because of that murder.
yeah, but then we should ask who would be happy about that. Okay, we have the military which would not want to get out of Vietnam. They wanted to continue.
Oh, no, on the contrary. One of the things that I learned at the CIA was, when we would do these meetings, we would do either principals committee or deputy committee meetings, and it's usually chaired by the vice president, and then you have the secretary of state, the secretary of defense, the chairman of the joint chiefs of staff, the national security advisor, the CIA director, and all of the note takers. I was one of the note takers. The people who were the most anti-war were the military.
Yeah, because they have to fight it.
They have to fight it. And then the ones who were the most pro war were normally the State Department people.
Why is that? Because they have to get like why is that? Like I
Well,
have
look,
my ideas, but I don't know if they are a conspiracy.
it's not a conspiracy. It's that for them, it's easier just to send troops than it is to conduct very difficult, very complicated diplomacy. Diplomacy can take years.
But yeah, it's easier
You know,
to
why
call than
bother?
shoot.
When George W. Bush was president, we used to joke at the CIA that we had never seen a State Department work so hard to not talk to our enemies. Like, oh, no, we don't talk to the Cubans. We don't talk to the Iranians. We don't talk to the Iraqis. We don't talk to the Afghans. We don't talk to the Chinese. We don't talk. Well, then who do you talk to? You
Yeah,
talk to the British and the Canadians? That's not diplomacy.
no.
But that continued. We saw it. We saw it in the second half of Bill Clinton's administration. We saw it all through George W. Bush, and we certainly have seen it with Joe Biden.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, and then when we go back to the JFK files, like what we read out of them were like that the whole magical bullet theory you can literally forget, which is, and then I'm always thinking who was actually believing that, and then when you see okay, maybe we don't have the fully proof that CIA did it, but we had the intelligence memo from the Russians that there are rogue CIA agents, and then we had this conversation from JFK, what you told me, that he said he wants to destroy the CIA into thousands of pieces. So you can connect the dots. We still don't have all the evidence, but do you think that the CIA or some of uh, members of the CIA were really actually happy that the Fred Kennedy was gone?
Oh my gosh, yes. In fact, they were actually quite public about it. A lot of them said, one of them famously said, they finally got the son of a bitch. Um, and you know, it wasn't just Kennedy that warned us about the CIA. In Eisenhower's last speech as president, he coined the term military industrial complex,
Yeah.
which included the CIA. And he warned us about the power of the military industrial complex and the intelligence community. He warned us. After Kennedy was killed, former President Truman, who lived until 1972, wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post in which he said that the CIA should be destroyed. The Washington Post did not run that op-ed for 5 years, and it
Really?
was finally published in 1968. So these presidents knew that the CIA was out of control and it needed to be destroyed, but instead, it destroyed them.
Yeah, they got rid of one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so having the CIA being very dangerous in going rogue, uh, we Germans always had have the big question, and I don't know if this ever gonna get answered by official authorities, but Nord Stream.
Yeah. I said when this first happened, I'll tell you a little story. I have a very, very dear friend. He's a lifelong State Department officer, and I did a rotation to the State Department. I worked at the State Department for 3 years, and I worked for him, and he's become one of my very closest, dearest friends. And I said to him, it was the day after Nord Stream. I said, "This had to be us, right? We must have done this." And he said, "Well, of course we did it. Who do you think did it?"
Yeah.
And then, of course, you know, on TV, the politicians are all blaming the Russians. Why would the Russians blow up their own pipeline? Like, come on. First of all, the Ukrainians don't have the expertise, right? They don't have submarines, for example. The Europeans wouldn't want to do it because they're the ones that are taking delivery of the gas, and they need the gas. Winter was coming. So who doesn't give a shit? The United States. The United States doesn't care if people are cold in Europe over the winter. They
Yeah,
wanted to
they
screw
want,
the Russians.
yeah,
Yeah,
and they want that Germany buys
American
gas.
oil,
Yeah.
of course. So I've always been convinced that it was most likely a CIA operation, but the CIA doesn't really have that kind of expertise. What bureaucratically, the way it would work would be the president orders the CIA to do it. The CIA goes to the Navy and says, we need some underwater demolitions experts and a submarine. So the CIA is overall in charge of the operation, and the Navy actually carries it out.
Okay, so they are the authority arm, and then they get the order from the president, then they
Yeah,
to the military arm, and then say, okay, you have to send this a special group of experts to fulfill the mission.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay, but that's not really how you should treat your allies, I guess.
No, it's not. But don't forget the old saying that there are no permanent relationships, only permanent interests.
So what do you think about right now the interests with Europe? Because we see now how the wording is right now from the White House, especially from the Vice President, about Europe and that Europe, if they want to get still their safety, they have to act more positive to the way of the uh, vice president and the president, or then they are get screwed. Especially when we saw what he said in this chat was not really a big skill of diplomacy. So, what do you think is right now the scale of interests with?
The advice that I would give European leaders would be patient. You need to wait 3 years and 9 months, and it's all going to be over. I was. We have this saying in the United States that you are shocked but not surprised. I was shocked but not surprised at what I read about our European friends and allies in this Signal chat. It was so offensive. The things that, not just that the principals said, but just the fact that they feel this way in the first place. And they said it in a private chat. Like you could say, I don't like the Germans. They're cheap or they're lazy or whatever. You say that just to embarrass the Germans. But to say it in a private chat tells me that you mean it,
Yeah.
right? So to say that the Europeans are disgusting and unreliable and you're not interested in friendship with them, like what is wrong with you? What are you thinking?
Yeah,
This
because
is
when you see like the German military was in Afghanistan,
Yeah, exactly. They did
we
us a
also
favor.
suffered our losses, and a lot of people who came home are now facing the pain of PTSD or lost
Yes,
comrades afterwards. And
yes,
the British went to Iraq and Afghanistan with America, and then you have
yes, indeed.
someone saying, "Oh, if you want to rely on an army who had never been into a war since 40 years, that's like kind of." Dude, sorry for my French, but dude, like, did he really said that right now?
Seriously, like what in the world are they doing? I would not be surprised if the American ambassador in Berlin were meeting with the foreign minister or has met with the foreign minister over the past couple of days just to say, I'm sorry for the language that was used in those chats. That is not the position of the United States. I
Yeah,
would not at all be surprised if those meetings have taken place.
yeah, because the thing is like, I think Trump is a very, very good president for domestic things, like with executive orders, saving the women's rights and all that stuff, and stopping child trafficking and all that
Mhm.
stuff. And especially when you see what's going on right now in our country with our politicians, where they just let everyone in, and our crimes are going up the roof with gang rapes, and they are all conducted mostly by people with heritage from East. the Middle East, and then they just say that to get voted in, are we going to stop that because we had this person with the mini who ran into this group, and we had this tragic where this mother and this child
Yes.
died. And then he said, "Oh no, we're not changing anything." So I totally understand why the people in the UK and Germany say, "Now we need a person like Trump." I totally get that. I would love to have such a person as a chancellor in Germany for domestic legislation. But if America wants to stay the police of the world and the most powerful military, they need a little bit more diplomacy
Yes.
or a little bit
Yes.
training in diplomacy because you can't just bully everything because you think that gets you far. No.
And this is something that president after president after president just doesn't seem to understand.
Yeah,
You can't just bully everybody and think that they're going to fall into line.
yeah. And I don't know, like, do you think that they are with the NATO part? I know you are a whistleblower from the CIA, but with having your experience with counterterrorism and you know how important NATO is, do you think really that this is gonna be a plan from the American government to withdraw NATO, or is this just high poker?
It's all talk.
Yeah,
It's
because
all
they need
talk.
NATO. They need them. Like it's not.
You know what? Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Speaking of needing NATO, do you know the one and only time since the creation of NATO that the charter was invoked to help a NATO member country that was attacked?
After 9/11.
There it is right there.
That's what I'm always saying because, like, I served in the military, in the German military, 8.5 years, and that's why I got a little bit upset when I hear, all the allies, they don't do their job. Like, we did our job.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Yeah,
we
you did.
answered when you called us. Like, you,
Yes, you did. You know what? I went to the last time I went to Afghanistan, it was like 2011.
Mhm.
I went with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and I went to the mess hall one day, the cafeteria, and it was like walking into the United Nations cafeteria. There were 25 different countries that were represented there. And I thought, yeah, this is NATO. That's what this is.
Yeah.
NATO and the major non-NATO allies.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
what is important. And I think like maybe we should uh, get common sense in foreign policies again,
yeah,
like on both sides. Like I totally get that rushing into putting troops on the ground in Ukraine, what the UK wants and the French wants, is not a good idea because this will end up in a third world war, and this is what nobody wants.
yes,
But being the total opposite, like the Americans are right now, is kind of not really helpful. I think it's like what America is right now. We need more unity. We have to get back to the common sense and say, hey, what are the best interests for all of us? And then everyone has to make compromises. We can't just say, oh, no, we are America. We just do it like we want. Like this doesn't work.
yes. I think you're exactly right. The United States, the U.S. government, needs to make major changes to the way it carries out foreign policy. And the first step should be to do away with this terrible policy of bullying.
Yeah, it just seems like it. Like I don't know. We all watched those high school movies where you had the high school quarterback bullying everyone because he thought he's gonna be popular because doing that, and then in the end he gets sidetracked, and then the underdog
Yeah,
became the famous person. So maybe we should remember a little bit this
that's right. Yeah,
behavior.
we should take a lesson from it. Yes.
Das war das Interview mit CIA-Whistleblower John Kiriakou und ich kann nur sagen, ich habe viele Antworten bekommen, die ich mir schon gedacht habe, aber dann diese ganzen Zusammenhänge erklärt zu bekommen von jemandem, der spezialisiert und in diesem Unit und der Agency gearbeitet hat, ist natürlich immer noch was anderes. Und wie können wir sagen, sehr viele unserer Aluhüte sind dann doch keine Aluhüte und keine Verschwörungstheorien mehr. Und wie John richtig gesagt hat, wir müssen jetzt die nächsten 4 Jahre abwarten, wie sich das ganze Strategie- und Machtspiel im Weißen Haus und Europa herausstellen wird. Und ja, wir werden sehen, ob Trump und seine Anhänger das Gesetz ändern kann und er vielleicht doch länger als 4 Jahre im Weißen Haus sitzt. Das werden wir auch sehen. Und ja, ich hoffe, euch hat das Interview gefallen. Ich fand es sehr interessant und wichtig und auch viele Fragen, die ich mir jahrelang schon gestellt habe, speziell über JFK, aber auch mit Nord Stream wurden beantwortet. Und ja, Intelligence Services sind immer sehr, sehr interessant. Das kann ich auf jeden Fall dazu sagen.